So these are the two approaches in terms of doing mass sequencing. If you have a larger genome, if your goal is one gene, we're done. So you did it, consensus, blast, done. But if your goal is a large fragment, not a single reaction of chain termination will not enable you to do that. So you need to focus on these approaches. So what do we mean by shotgun, or also called random sequencing? The shotgun is this method. One of the advantages is you don't necessarily need to have pre-existing knowledge about the sequence. Even if you do, you may have some partial things. I may know about my mRNA strain has a make A, but I don't know, let's say, whether it is carried onto some mobile element. It might be on island, in a genomic island. How would I sequence that big region? Or it can be as big as the whole genome of a virus, or the whole organism of bacteria, or even higher eukaryotes, like humans. So it's a very practical in terms of, when you want to sequence large genomes, okay? At it a little bit more. So now, let's assume you have genome. You extract DNA. Again, you all are experts in terms of DNA extraction, right? QIAGEN, DNA easy tissue kits, do whatever you do. And then you do fragments of DNA. You need to fragment it. I cannot sequence the whole genome, right? 50 kb. Can I sequence? No. As we said earlier, 800 base pair maybe you can do good accuracy. Okay? If I have a 50 kb genome that we discussed earlier, so what do I do to sequence it? Fragment. Okay, I said, how do you fragment a DNA? Do we know? Restriction. Okay, now it comes into, remember the restriction digestion? So you need to digest the DNA. Okay? Your restriction digest is using, then you get this different combination of different sizes of DNA fragments. Okay, then what do I do? Okay. So once you have each fragment, okay, now the genome is all fragmented. Okay, 50 kb, depending on, again, on the restriction sequence, or that you may have, let's say, 195 fragments, as we said, if we use a 4 cutter, right? Then what do? I clone it into a vectors. What are vectors? These are unique plasmids with markers. It's modified plasmids, essentially, just to put it simply, with some markers. It may have some antibiotic resistance marker, others that I can attach or ligate. Okay? Ligation is the opposite of restriction digestion, essentially. You have double-stranded to double-stranded, you ligate it. Okay? So I ligate all of these various fragments that we saw earlier, and you will see here, they are attached to these vectors. And then transfect it into typically E. coli, or it could be different organisms, but okay. So you create a library, right? A chromosomal genomic library of your organism. Are we clear so far? Now we are in a different magnitude, a different level from one gene sequencing versus you've got multiple genomes. Still, I don't know what the sequence is, right? But I know, I have a good idea, if I use some restriction enzyme, they have a targeted cutting. I will use that same enzyme, I showed you example in a previous lecture, I will use the same enzyme to cut the plasmid vectors. And then we ligate, attach them, and then you create a library. Okay, so far? Okay. Then your assembly. Now, you have this 50 kb we said, you've got lots of fragments. I hope we agree so far based on the discussion so far. You sequence these many fragments, you assemble them. Okay. When you assemble them, you will have some overlaps, some or gaps. Okay. How do you fill those gaps? Okay. So far, the method we use is shotgun sequencing. Randomly, you don't know the fragment, but you know the digest. Inserted into vector, amplified or in a natural way, transferred using E. coli, and then you sequence each of these. Now you assemble it, but typically when you assemble, you may not necessarily get. There is a very high chance that you don't get all of them assembled in exactly there is certain steps. Usually you will have a gap. Let's say between this fragment and the next fragment you may have a gap. What do you do? How do you fill the gaps? And there are some slides missing, but
Designing primers, the end on the one side and the first on the other non-side.
okay.
Side.
Okay. All right. Primer working. That is a description of. Okay. So okay. I asked this fragment, different fragments. But usually once you try to assemble them, you will have a gap. So you can design a primer on this way, or if you know both, you've got good knowledge and narrow gap, you can design both ways. And then that is a primer working, which really complements with the shotgun sequencing method to fill the gaps. Okay. Then at the end of the day, after you do shotgun primer working, you will have complete history or complete information of the sequences. Let's say this being 50 kb. Okay? Are we clear? So what we looked at is the basic DNA sequencing using Sanger chain termination dideoxy method. You have to understand the key difference is the dideoxy part, is the chain termination. And then if it is one gene or 500 base pair or 800, that's easy. But then you have to understand it is in a mass scale, mostly in genomes. How are they sequenced? Using the same method, chain termination. Then you complement it with shotgun method, where you will have, but you have to create a cloned library of these fragments. You sequence them individually, assemble them, and you fill the gaps. Okay, those are the basic principles. But once you get into the detail, there are technical specificities and things you need to do. Julius?
Yeah, the question is, when you don't have the gaps, you have already seen when you have gaps, you do
Okay.
primer work. But what you have the overlaps?
No gaps? No overlaps.
But you have overlaps.
Oh, you are lucky. Very nice situation. You just really fact, you have not. Now you have a complete information. You may not need, but it depends on the size. If it's 13 kb of influenza, you've got this, it might be, you can maybe easily do it. But often the reverse is the problem. If you have fully, complete genome, then no need to do primer working. If it's only important if you have gaps in your assembled fragment, you don't have a complete information. Or sometimes you do not prove things, by the way. There has been a human genome revised one, if you guys, some of you remember, that there were some positions that you think it is down in, way down in 3' part of some, beyond next to some toxin genes, but actually that position might be different. There is lots of bioinformatics and annotation and all, there is many process with that. But if there is no gap, it's a smaller genome, or your let's say, Julius, you work on integrals, right? So if you have this large integral with 5, 6, 7 genes, you have complete information and it's complete, then you don't need for primer work.
So does that mean that you then need to align those?
Align, whether it's a single gene, part of a gene, you better align your forward, reverse, remember that consensus building, all those steps we saw, one gene remains true. The same thing. You are discussing is on top of that. You build your consensus, you look at your own forward, reverse sequences. Is it accurate? You may have to go back to and then do your sequence again. Your reverse and forward may not be aligning. It happened in many cases. But you do the same thing for single genes. But this is additional things. You have to clone them, but also sequence. You make sure it is accurate, high fidelity, your forward and reverse aligns, you have a consensus sequence for each of these fragments. Then, this is additional step. Do I have a gap? If there is no gap after you clear everything, that's great, wonderful. Typically, you'll have a gap, you fill the gap. You have now much more information to develop a primer because you already have lots of the sequences to fill that gap. Does that make it clear, Julius? Okay. Any other question? It's a definition issue. That is your host of when you create your library, you translate it with E. coli. Okay. Good point. Good, very good discussion. Questions? Okay. Oh, absolutely. So that is the advantage in the host is I will know what the question. It's very good point. Yes, E. coli in the E. coli it replicates. You are amplifying it biologically rather than not using thermocycline. Once it gets into a vector with your cloned DNA, oh yeah, of course.
It's the same process in people.
Yeah.
So it replicates itself.
It replicates itself. It's yes, that's so you maintain it, you amplify it in a fairly natural way. Absolutely, yeah. But the key thing you need to understand is you don't know the sequence. You know the fragment is cut by a restriction enzyme. You clone it into a vector and then naturally amplify it in a way and maintain it in E. coli until you are ready. And then from E. coli, you do the same DNA extraction, harvest it, and then sequence it using a primer of the background vector because you already have a knowledge. Are we good? Okay. And we can discuss that later. But then you sequence each of these. Look at each of these are now sequenced. So you have these readings, lots of readings. And then you can just line them up, all of each of these sequence to assemble them. Okay, that's the next step. You need assembly. If it's a small, no need. But if it's large fragment, you've got several genes, somehow sequenced using this vector primer. Now you want to assemble them. Okay? So you have theoretically the unknown genome is here, but you've got different sequences you are trying to assemble from forward and reverse. Then we just get with that, but now the other part of sequencing which we don't cover in the interest of time is various newer types, particularly pyrosequencing. Okay, pyrosequencing is a synthesis-based, totally no more chain termination. Now we still use Sanger, but with this method it is synthesis-based. Biotage came up in 1994. Others, it uses a very different system to sequence based on synthesis. And now, in fact, the next generation sequencing methods, you heard of Roche 5454, others, they use a pyrosequencing, the shorter reads, but lots of, in fact, used to be very short, like you can do only 70 when I knew it in 95 or so, just 70 bases you can sequence. It's got lots of residual chemicals, but now they modified the system to be able to do 200, 300 reads, which is fairly large for pyrosequencing. And then you do multiple of these to do in overnight, you can sequence the whole genome. That's the next generation sequencing method, but we're not going to cover that. So I will stop here. So we looked at again the three core methods: amplification, restriction, and sequencing, and we'll continue with genotyping methods which involve one or more of these core methods. Okay, starting from this afternoon. All right, thank you very much, and we'll see you after lunch. I don't know what time do we come back. I don't know what time it is now.